We begin with developments on the war in Ukraine, where a fresh diplomatic push is underway as 2025 draws to a close. So US President Donald Trump has said that negotiators are getting closer to a possible peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Now, this statement comes following his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. This meeting is also coming amid intensified diplomacy involving Washington and Kiev and Moscow, even as the war continues on the ground with no ceasefire in place. So speaking to reporters after the talks, Donald Trump said that progress has been made, but also went ahead and cautioned what he called thorny issues. So Donald Trump is saying that yes, thorny issues still remain unresolved. He did not for now offer a timeline for when or if a final agreement could be reached. The latest visuals that you're seeing on your screens are of the talks that took place. The White House has posted that video. Let's tell you about what Donald Trump said. Also, we'll play out the reaction of Zelensky.
Well, I think look, you can say 95%, but I don't like to say percentages. I just think we're doing very well. We could be very close. There are one or two very thorny issues, very tough issues, but I think we're doing very well. We made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff, but I think when the president says 95, I think, could be close to 95%.
Dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank President Trump for a great meeting at this amazing place in his home in Mar-a-Lago, and we had a really great discussions on all the topics, and we appreciate the progress that was made by American and Ukrainian teams in these recent weeks. Special thanks to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and thank you for their engagement and full commitment, and also to our team, and first of all to Rustem Umerov and General Gnatov, and to all our teams. And we discussed all the aspects of the peace framework, which includes, and we have a great achievements, 20-point peace plan, 90% agreed, and US-Ukraine security guarantees 100% agreed. US-Europe-Ukraine security guarantees almost agreed. Military dimension 100% agreed. Prosperity plan being finalized, and we also discussed the sequencing of the following actions. And we agree that security guarantees is a key milestone in achieving lasting peace, and our teams will continue working on all aspects. We also had a joint productive call with European leaders, like President Trump said already, and a lot of leaders, including NATO and the EU, and we agreed that our teams will meet in upcoming weeks to finalize all discussed matters, and we agreed with President Trump that he will host us, and maybe in Washington, European leaders and Ukrainian delegation, yes, in January. And Ukraine is ready for peace. And once again, would like to thank President Trump for a warm welcome and substantial discussion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
So quickly summing up what Ukrainian President Zelensky said, he said that the discussions are focused on a broad peace framework. He also added that important elements have been identified and final outcomes will depend on security guarantees for Ukraine and also unresolved territorial questions, which have always been the thorny issues. And any peace deal, like would also require the consent of Russia. Srinjoy Chaudhary is with us. Also joining us on the phone line is Rishabh. But before I come across to Rishabh, let me go across to Srinjoy. Srinjoy, how significant is this particular meeting in terms of actual progress towards a peace deal? Donald Trump has put a number. He says 95% issues have been resolved.
As President Trump said, close to 95%. But the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. Now there are two major issues that have to be looked at. First of all, is how much land is Ukraine ready to give up? Now they've been fighting for nearly 4 years for their country. And will this peace deal mean giving up a large part of Luhansk and Donetsk? That's the first thing. And not to forget the Crimea, which the Russians took in 2014. And Ukraine says Crimea is Russian territory. So that is something that the people of Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, will have to sort out. Secondly, security guarantee. What does security guarantee actually mean? Does it mean that, let's say, if Russia attacks Ukraine again 5 years from now, will America come to Ukraine's aid? Will Europe come to Ukraine's aid? Does the security guarantee say that? Is it a NATO-type security guarantee? That is something Ukraine wants. Now, is Ukraine ready to give up territory, large chunks of territory that it has fought for nearly 4 years,
Right.
for a security guarantee of what kind?
Absolutely.
That's the issue.
Yes.
The other important thing is...
Sanjoy, before we talk about the other important issues, and I apologize for interjecting, we have former Ambassador Suresh Goyal with us. Please stay on with us. Ambassador Goyal, good morning. We are seeing, an end of the year diplomatic push. Donald Trump says that almost 95% of the issues between Russia and Ukraine with regards to a peace deal remain resolved, but also speaks about thorny issues. How are you looking at this development?
Important development, and I hope that the remaining 5%, which is very, very important, is resolved. The remaining 5% actually relate to the control of territory that Russia has so far won in Ukraine. To the best of my knowledge, so far, Putin has not agreed to vacate some parts of the territory, and Ukraine is practically insisting on the vacation of territory. It will all depend upon the position taken by Europe. And if you remember that the war actually started with the insistence of Ukraine, practical insistence to join NATO, and Europe had actually encouraged that kind of a position. So let us see what happens. I'm positive, but we will need to really wait for the remaining 5%, which can be quite tricky.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador Goyal, for joining us. KP Fabian also with us. Good morning, Mr. Fabian. Donald Trump also mentioned thorny issues without any detail based on, without telling us about what these thorny issues are. But based on what we know so far, what, as per you, are likely to be the most difficult issues to be resolved? And do you think these are thorny issues because of which things haven't been resolved so far?
Thank you. Good morning. The two main issues are, one, territorial, and the other is Ukraine wants, security assurance. That is, Russia will not attack again, and if Russia attacks again in the future, the Europeans and America should come to Ukraine's support immediately, without any conditions. I mean, what they call Article 5 type of security under the NATO treaty, without, of course, being a member of NATO. Now, as regards the second matter, that is security, it seems there is some agreement, though it is not complete. Because let's dig into it, because what Trump said is that let the Europeans take the initiative and we will support. Now, Europeans, of course, will take the initiative, and their plan is to have a European force there. And Russia has always said that it will not permit that. But my view is that Russia might sort of agree to it, provided Europeans defreeze, that $200 billion of the frozen assets of the Russian central bank in Europe, primarily in Belgium. So that possibility is there.
Right.
But as regards territorial concessions, what Zelensky is saying that he doesn't want to use the word withdrawal. He is prepared to use the word demilitarized economic zone. And what he wants is both Russia and Ukraine to withdraw their military forces and let there be economic activity.
Right.
Let it be demilitarized. But my view is that Putin is never going to agree to withdraw his forces from Donbass.
Right.
But the rest of the areas, he might. So we still have problems. Nevertheless, let me put it this way. Zelensky is skating on thin ice, and he is likely to fall.
Right. Thank you, Ambassador Fabian, for joining us this morning. Rabinder Sachdev, also international affairs expert, with us. Mr. Sachdev, good morning. As 2025 draws to a close, we are seeing a renewed diplomatic push with regards to a peace deal. But yes, there has been an admission on both sides, from the United States, also an admission from Ukraine, that yes, there are some thorny issues. We know about the developments as they've transpired. How central do you think is the territorial question, especially eastern Ukraine, to any prospective deal?
Well, thank you so much. A pleasure to be with you. I think the territorial issue is the primary issue. I mean, the war is about territory, right? Russian forces moving in and Russia claiming at least the eastern parts of Ukraine, the Donbas region, as its own for historical and cultural and security reasons. So the issue of territory is absolutely essential to the whole deal or the peace or whatever we are seeing today. Therein, this talk of a demilitarized zone, as I think your previous speaker was mentioning, I find it quite improbable will happen. Russia will not withdraw from the grounds or the lands that it has occupied so far. That, to outsiders, towards outsiders, seems absolutely impossible. Putin will not be able to justify the sacrifices, the killings of the Russian soldiers and this entire special military operation if he were to withdraw and to create a demilitarized zone. I find it absolutely improbable, but we do not know what happens inside, the walls and in Trump's head and Putin's head and Zelensky's head and where they're headed. But to me, it seems absolutely improbable that Russia would, withdraw even 1 inch of territory.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sachdev, for joining us and, giving us your perspective on the latest development. There have been talks between Donald Trump and Zelensky. Rishabh is with us. Srinjoy, before I come to you, Rishabh, we know that any deal, prospective peace deal, requires Russian consent. So what does Putin's involvement, including that phone call with Donald Trump, tell us about Moscow's position at this stage?
Well, Moscow's position is very clear, Sagarika, if we talk about. They want the current situation to be seen as the actual situation. While Russia continues to claim whole of Ukraine as their own territory, but for the sake of peace, Putin has agreed that wherever they are standing, which means that 1/3 of Ukraine, which is somewhat under Russian control, remains under Russian control. And that's the thorny issue that both Trump and Zelensky are talking about. While Trump is of the mood that let's have a middle path and give bit of territory to Russia, return bit to Ukraine, so both of them have something to tell their masses. But Putin says that whatever is in Russia's control should be in Russia's control, which means Crimea is gone, which means Donbass and Luhansk is gone, which means a part of eastern Ukraine, which is Russian-speaking, and Russia has taken over, remains with Russia. This is something that Putin wants. Yes, there are negotiations that they are ready to come on table, but whether Zelensky and Putin will agree for the territory swap as per the current situation on ground, that is something that is very, very important to see whether anyone will agree to it, because it will be a difficult position to take for both of them.
All right. Thank you so much, Rishabh, for joining us with your perspective on how Moscow is looking at these developments. Let me go back to Srinjoy Chaudhary. Srinjoy, we've spoken about what these thorny issues are, how Russia's role can be looked at this point of time. But let's also talk about the India perspective. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has always made his position clear and has said that India is on the side of peace. When you look at these developments, then you also look at Russia's intensified attack on Kiev. How do you think India is looking at the situation as it unfolds?
As the Prime Minister has said in the past, war is not something you look at in the 21st century. India wants this war to end and as quickly as possible. India wants both sides to sit down and sort things out. So if there is these talks going on in Florida, this is something India will be very happy with. At the end of the day, it's that old phrase that was used in the Middle East a long time ago, land for peace. Is that actually going to work? If, let's say, Ukraine hands over a part of its territory to Russia, will Russia end the war, end the invasion? That's the question. And the other question is, will there be that security guarantee that Ukraine wants? Which means that if Ukraine is ever attacked by anyone in the future, will the Americans, will the Europeans come to its aid immediately? And will there be a European force comprising European soldiers, German, French, British, in Ukraine permanently? These are questions that have to be answered. We are not sure what the 20-point plan will eventually lead to. But if this meeting in Florida and the conversation with Putin and Trump actually lead to peace, then very good.
Thank you so much, Ranjor, for breaking down all the details for our viewers. And before we move on, viewers, let's listen in to what Donald Trump said about his conversation with Vladimir Putin. Thank you, Ranjor. Let's listen to that soundbite.
We had a terrific meeting. We discussed a lot of things. As you know, I had an excellent phone call with President Putin that lasted for over 2 hours. We discussed a lot of points, and I do think we're getting a lot closer, maybe very close. The President and I just spoke to the European leaders. They were President Emmanuel Macron of France, President Alexander Stubb of the Republic of Finland, President Karol Nawrocki of the Republic of Poland, Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store of the Kingdom of Norway, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of the Italian Republic, Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom of Britain and Northern Ireland, Chancellor Friedrich Merz, the Federal Republic of Germany, Secretary General Mark Rutte, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, President Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission. We spoke to all of those great leaders. They're all great leaders. And we had a great talk with them after we were completed. We thought it was appropriate to speak with them. And our meeting was excellent. We covered, somebody would say 95%. I don't know what percent, but we have made a lot of progress on ending that war, which is really certainly the most deadly war since World War II, probably the biggest war since World War II.